Hi, thank you for clicking on this video, and today what I'm going to share with you is something a common beginner will always face. These overflowing kind of errors when you do your UI coding. So what I mean by that, if I were to show you, is inside this example there is this I can't see. So there is this very common overflow error when you do stuff, right? So for example, you want to put a widget inside your layout widgets like your row that we have over here. So what I'm going to go through is how you're going to debug these kind of errors that you always face during your mobile development or your Flutter development experience. So this was motivated by this Flutter ListView overflow kind of Stack Overflow question. Stack Overflow question. And it is a very simple example where we have over here, wow, nice pictures, but basically there is this very simple right overflowed by 21 pixels. So the question is, how do I remove this ugly ass error? And I got actually two solutions for you. And this is basically two types of use cases that you want to figure out. So the first thing is that I will ask whether this whole row section over here, is it scrollable left to right, or is it just a simple grid where you have two pictures on both sides over here? So what I found out is that from the Stack Overflow questions, this person wants to swipe left and right so that there's more children widgets that you can scroll from left to right. Alright, so but first of all, let me introduce you to the first solution where you just want to show two pictures inside a row. So basically I've copy and pasted the code from the Stack Overflow and I replace a very simple image over here, which is what we are doing right now, coding. So basically this whole app is a list view where you will scroll up and down, so vertically, and then after that you have a button row which is right over here, and then you have a text. I don't know what language is this. Comment down below if you know what language this is, and then we have this offer row which has our error overflow, and lastly we have another text. So we are going to focus more on this offer row over here. So let's scroll up and we have this offer row, and it's basically a row that has a children of an offer 1, a vertical divider, and an offer 1. So offer 1, let's see what this offer 1 is. And this offer 1 is a container with a specific height and width, and is basically also a button. So you can click on the images. For example, if I hover over it, it's clickable. And then at the same time, it consists of a column of widgets. So we have an image and a text. As you can see over here, we have an image that has a specific width and height. Now, the thing is, we are currently having a width of 280. And at the same time, we have a container that has a width of 280. So one thing I would like to do is I would like to refactor, because I would say that this container would probably require its own height, but the width is around the same because it's just wrapping around the image widget. If you were to save this, alright, so now it looks the same. It's just that now we can control the height of the container because we are containing some text over here as well. Alright, so now we have that done. We have this overflow problem. So let's go into our debug console and see where exactly is our error coming from. This is a simple error message we get from a very simple overflow error. And the thing is, personally, if I was a student and I were to look at this error, I will be a little bit scared because there's too many red text, especially in VS Code. So let's deep dive into what the error message is talking about. The first thing it says, a render flex overflowed by 76 pixels on the right. Right overflowed by 76 pixels. So this is what it means by render overflow right by certain kind of pixels. So the next thing it says, the relevant error causing widget was row. So there is this clickable link that you can click on. So if you were to click this, and then it will open up to exactly where we are looking for. So it says this row is having a problem. So now we can deep dive into this row. So let's see more towards this error message. So the overflowing render flex has an orientation of axis horizontal. The age of the render flex, blah blah blah. This is usually caused by contents being too big for the render flex. Consider applying a flex factor, example using an expanded widget. To force the children of the render flex to fit within the available space instead of being sized to their natural size. Okay, so one thing I have a little bit of a suggestion or things to improve is that Flutter team, if you're hearing me out, for any suggestions, I would say having a calmer kind of color, because I would say personally, if I were to look at this red bunch of text, I would probably ignore it. But if I were to see a different kind of color, for example, this might be a little bit calmer color, like maybe in between the blue and red, but not red basically. I would say warning or any suggestions, maybe have a different color so that people will like, okay, I'll be reading this instead. So actually inside this error message of this blob of text, right, there's actually the answer that you can use inside this row. Do you know what widget we can use? And if you figured that you can use the expanded widget, you are right. So you can read further along. If the content is legitimately bigger than available space, consider clipping it with a clip rect, blah blah. So this is another suggestion talking about whether if the content is bigger than the available space, maybe you can try using a clip rectangle before putting in a flex, or using a scrollable container rather than a flex like a list view. Alright, so there's a lot of suggestions I've been seeing so far. There's actually 3 suggestions. The first one is the expanded widget, which I'm going to go through later. The second one is clip rectangle. I have not used this clip rectangle widget for me to, debug some of these overflow kind of errors. And lastly, using a scrollable container rather than a flex like a list view, which is also another solution that I'm going to go through in this video. So actually, to find your answer, most of the time you have to read the error message properly. But I will not blame you, because when you see a bunch of redness, you probably will not read it, and you probably go Stack Overflow and probably just copy and paste and see whether people can answer your questions. I'm not blaming on you on that. But Flutter team, if you were to, change the color, I think it would really make your developer experience even better. Now currently our image over here, you can see over here, is taking a specific width. Currently our width for our image is 280. So you can see over here, our image has a width of 280. And the thing is, it's overflowing because our current screen width is less than, if 280 times 2 and add a bit, maybe 10 pixels, it is less than 570 pixels. So what we can do is actually to override this width. So what we are going to do is we are going to make this widget to be much more flexible. And how are we going to make it flexible? Make this offer one widget wrapped with an expanded widget. So let's scroll all the way down and see inside over here. Let's then just wrap this widget. So you can press command dot or control dot, and then you can wrap this with a widget, and let's put in expanded. And then let's do the same over here. Let's remove offer one. And if you were to save this, now you could see that our widget is able to squeeze in our current size. But what if our screen width is bigger than our current width? What I mean by that is, if I were to expand this, it actually holds to its 280 width. So how am I going to know that this is 280? So there is this thing called Dart DevTools for you to actually see the width of an image. So you can Command Shift P or Control Shift P and open the DevTools, or you can type in Dart Open DevTools. And then this will open the DevTools in another Chrome tab. What we can do is, if we were to look inside our current image over here, so if we click on image, and then this will show exactly what our image width looks like. So if you were to see our raw image widget, or you could say the image.network widget, width parameters is 280. However, if I were to go to the render object, it says that our size is currently 280 for our width. What this means is basically, once we specify a certain width in our image, so what this means is that this will intrinsically put inside our image widget as a maximum width for 280. However, if we were to make it into a mobile view, and then if I were to refresh this web browser, refresh the tree and click on image and render object, you could see that our render object now has a size of 242. Currently our size is 242, which is lower than our actual width that we set for our image. So this is due to the expanded widget, because the expanded widget will actually override how we fit our width of the widget. So now using expanded, this is really helpful if you want to do something like, for example, if you want to have a maximum width or height for your widget. So now that the maximum width for this widget is 280 and it doesn't expand more than 280. However, if you make it smaller, then it will squeeze less than 280. So it depends on your situation. So this example is only useful if you want your images to show like a grid. So there isn't swiping left and right. You just want to show it accordingly inside a row and size it according to small sizes, for example. Now, what if this is not what you want, but you want something to scroll from left to right? So there is this statement inside the row documentation that says if you have a line of widgets and you want them to be able to scroll if there is insufficient room, consider using a list view. So list view in Flutter is basically a list, whether it is a column or a row, that you can scroll. So it is a very common widget that a lot of applications use, and let's use according to this example that we have. So now we are not going to use expanded, we are going to use the list view. To give you an example of how a list view looks like, so you have a bunch of widgets and usually it's in a column format. So you have your row of buttons and then you have your row of widgets and then you can scroll up and down. Now let's implement a list view, which is what we have right now inside the list view. Alright, so we can remove this expanded, so you can just command dot, hello, command dot, alright, and then if you look closely, you can have this remove this widget and then you can just copy and paste the same thing. And I'm going to delete this. Alright, so we save this. Now we have our similar problem that we have, which is the overflow kind of error. Okay, so one thing I also want to point out is that try not to make your widgets to be a variable itself. You can extract it as its own widget, which I highly recommend. So I'll just do a simple refactor, and so I'm going to rename this as scrollable offer row. Okay, let's do that. We can add this scrollable offer row and we can paste it over here. Okay, so this is just my preference because I rather use a stateless widget, so you can, you know, add in more stuff if you want to, for example offer one or whatever, right? Now inside our scrollable offer, now what we are going to do is we are going to change our row into a list view. So we type in list and then view, not list body, list view, and it doesn't have a main axis alignment, but it has a scroll direction. So the scroll direction that we have is axis horizontal. So horizontal is left and right, and then vertical is up and down. So now let's save this and see what happens. Let's see our debug console. Oh no, there's so many errors. So if you were to scroll all the way up, so the first statement says that horizontal viewport was given unbounded height. So viewports expand in a cross axis to fill their container and constrain their children to match their extent in the cross axis. So in this case, a horizontal viewport was given an unlimited amount of vertical space in which to expand. So what this means basically is that I've created a list view with an unbounded height or a infinity height. So this will actually give an error because we can't have that. So what we can do is to bound it. How do we do that? So inside our list view, open up your shortcut menu, command or control dot, and then you can wrap with a container or a, my favorite, sized box. Alright, and then with this sized box, what sized box is basically, it is just a box with height and width. Yeah, and then you can put in a height, and we did a height of 150. So if you were to save this, now you could see that our app is rendered successfully. And if you were to scroll left to right, it's working. Yay! So congratulations. So in summary, there is two ways for you to solve this overflow problem. The first one that we have done so far is the expanded widget. But that use case is when you want to show an image according to the size of your screen. So you have a specific image width that you want, then you probably want to use an expanded widget. If you want your user to scroll from left to right, then use a scrollable widget. One of them is a list view. And remember, if you want to use a list view, your cross axis, for example, if I were to have a horizontal from left to right, then the cross axis, which is the vertical, must has a bounded height, and it does for vice versa. So for example, if I were to have a axis that is vertical, then my horizontal cannot be infinity. Alright, so that's about it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want more of this kind of debugging videos, subscribe down below and comment down any kind of errors that you usually face and don't know what to do. Leave it in the comment section down below. And that's it. Stay safe and all the best. Bye. Bye.